So, what is a country really? I mean, we throw that word state around all the time, but what does it actually mean? Well, it turns out that in political science, it's a super specific and really powerful idea. And today, we're going to unpack the four key ingredients that make a state a state. All right, let's jump right in with a question. Is California a state? Now, your first thought is probably, yeah, of course it is. But the real answer is a little more complicated. It's kind of both yes and no. And figuring out that little contradiction, that's the key to this whole thing. And right here, this is where all the confusion comes from. See, you've got your lowercase s state, which is just a region inside a country, like Texas or Bavaria in Germany or Ontario in Canada. But then you've got the capital S state. That's the whole country, the independent nation itself. We're talking France, Japan, Brazil. So just so we're clear, for the rest of this explainer, whenever I say state, I mean the big S version, the whole country. Okay, so how do we know if something actually counts as a capital S state? Well, political scientists have this pretty straightforward checklist. Four key ingredients that are absolutely essential, and you can really think of it like a recipe. If you're missing even one of these ingredients, you just don't have a state. Simple as that. And here they are. You need a population, a defined territory, a government, and the big one, the most important and honestly the trickiest one of all, sovereignty. We're going to break down each one of these step by step. All right, let's start with the first two ingredients. These are the ones you can kind of see and touch, the real physical foundation of any state. We're talking about its people and its place on the map. First up is population. And this one seems, well, pretty obvious, right? I mean, you can't exactly have a country with 0 people in it. But here's where it gets interesting. The size of the population, it totally doesn't matter. You could have a massive state like China with over 1 billion people, or a tiny microstate like Nauru with just 10,000. It also makes no difference if the people are all culturally similar or if it's this incredibly diverse mix. The only thing that matters is that you need a permanent population living there. Okay, so you've got your people. Great. Now, where do they live? That brings us to ingredient number 2, a defined territory. So, a state has to have clearly defined and recognized borders. And we're not just talking about the land either. This also includes the airspace above it and the waters along its coast. And just like with population, size is not a factor. You've got Russia, which is absolutely enormous, and then you have Vatican City, which is tiny. But guess what? They both have defined territories. This is exactly why border disputes are such a massive deal in world politics. They're a direct challenge to a state's very right to exist. All right, let's move on. We've got our people and we've got a place. Now we need the political machinery, the system that organizes and controls the whole shebang. And that brings us to ingredient number 3, government. You gotta have some kind of organization to actually run the show. A good way to think about it is that the government is kind of like the brain of the state. It's the organization that makes the laws, provides public services, think roads, defense, that kind of thing, and just generally keeps society from falling apart. And what's really important here is that the type of government doesn't matter for this definition. It could be a democracy, a monarchy, a dictatorship, whatever. As long as some kind of government exists and is in charge, that box gets checked. And now we've arrived at our 4th and final ingredient. This is the big one. This is the secret sauce that separates a capital S state from a lowercase s state. It is the absolute game changer, sovereignty. So, what exactly is sovereignty? Simply put, it means the state has the supreme, absolute, final authority within its own territory. Nobody inside the country is above the state, and no other country on the outside can tell the state what to do. It answers to no higher power. And this is precisely why California is a lowercase s state. See, it has the people, it has the territory, it has a government, but it's missing sovereignty. Because at the end of the day, it has to answer to the U.S. federal government. The famous sociologist Max Weber really nailed this. He said the state is the one group in a territory that successfully claims a monopoly on the legitimate use of force. Think about that. The state is the only one that gets to have a police force, an army, the power to put people in jail, legitimately. It has the final say. When some other group tries to do that, we call it a rebellion or a civil war, and that's a direct challenge to the state's sovereignty. Okay, so there you have it, our 4 ingredients: population, territory, government, and sovereignty. But why does any of this matter? What's the big deal? let's connect all this theory to what happens in the real world. Believe it or not, this simple definition is the bedrock of our entire global system. Population and territory, that defines who and what a country is responsible for. Government, that decides who gets to stand up at the United Nations and speak for the whole country. And sovereignty, well, sovereignty is the huge one. It's the fundamental rule that says, hey, one country can't just barge into another's business. It is the foundation for pretty much all international law and diplomacy. And you can see this definition in action every day. Right now, there are 193 sovereign states recognized as members of the United Nations. Every single one of them, from the biggest to the absolute smallest, checks all 4 of these boxes. So you see, this checklist isn't just some dusty academic idea. It's literally how we organize the entire planet. So yeah, these 4 ingredients have defined how our world works for centuries. But that leaves us with a really fascinating question as we look to the future. I mean, in a world where a tech giant like Apple has more economic clout than a lot of countries, and where powerful international groups like the European Union are challenging what sovereignty even means, is this classic 4-part definition of the state becoming obsolete? That's definitely something to chew on.